In the labyrinthine corridors of federal justice, where the echoes of celebrity scandals reverberate with the weight of public scrutiny and personal reckonings, Sean Diddy Combs stands at a precarious crossroads. The once unassailable titan of hip-hop, whose bad boy empire reshaped the soundscape of urban music and whose lavish parties defined an era of excess, has encountered yet another formidable setback in his protracted legal odyssey. Just days before his anticipated sentencing on October 3, U.S. District Judge Arun Subramanian delivered a resounding rejection to Combs' legal team's fervent plea for an acquittal and a fresh trial. This ruling, etched into the annals of a case that has captivated and horrified the nation in equal measure, underscores the unyielding tide of evidence that has painted a portrait of coercion, control, and calculated exploitation behind the glittering facade of fame. The judge's decision, rendered with the precision of a scalpel dissecting a complex organism, leaves little room for ambiguity. The government at trial presented overwhelming evidence of Combs' guilt under the Mann Act on many occasions with respect to his former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and a woman identified only as Jane, Subramanian wrote in his comprehensive September 30 ruling. The Mann Act, a century-old statute originally aimed at curbing interstate prostitution but broadened over decades to encompass a spectrum of exploitative transports, became the linchpin of the prosecution's case against Combs. At its core, the law prohibits the movement of individuals across state lines for immoral purposes, and here, it encapsulated allegations of orchestrated freak-offs, elaborate, multi-day sexual marathons allegedly fueled by narcotics and populated by hired participants, all under Combs' directive and dominion. This evidentiary fortress, as the judge meticulously outlined, was constructed from a mosaic of first-hand accounts and digital breadcrumbs. Testimony from Ventura and Jane formed the bedrock, their narratives unfolding like chapters in a grim confessional. Ventura, the R&B songstress whose career intertwined with Combs in a decade-spanning romance from 2007 to 2018, detailed a relationship ensnared in webs of manipulation. She described being herded into these freak-offs, events she portrayed as meticulously planned spectacles involving an entourage of Combs staffers who procured participants, substances, and seclusion across the country's luxury hideaways. He would mention them when he was upset about something. It was just a pretty common thing, Ventura recounted during her May testimony, her voice steady yet laced with the residue of long-buried trauma. The videos captured during these encounters, she alleged, served as Combs' leverage, a silent arsenal deployed to stifle dissent or enforce compliance. I feared for my career. I feared for my family. Just embarrassing, all of it. It's horrible and disgusting. No one should do that to anyone. Ventura's account was not one of isolated incidents but of systemic subjugation. She painted Combs as a figure of magnetic charm shadowed by volatility, a man whose influence permeated every facet of her existence. Whether it was career, sex, everything, I didn't have much of a say, she told the jury, her words a poignant echo of power imbalances that ripple through many high-profile entanglements. At 19, when their paths converged, Ventura was thrust into a world where Combs' imprimatur could launch stars or eclipse them. I was super young, I didn't know if he would be upset enough to be violent or not want to be with me at all, over time if I didn't do it. The fear was omnipresent, a low hum beneath the glamour. It was always in the back of my mind that I would somehow be hurt by him. Sean is a really polarizing person. He was very charming, it was hard to decide in that moment when he was telling you what he wanted. I just didn't know what would happen. Corroborating this were the voices of the escorts involved, women who stepped forward to affirm the orchestrated nature of these events, and a trove of text messages and emails that traced the logistics like a corporate memo gone awry. These digital artifacts, terse directives about travel itineraries, hotel bookings, and participant selections, revealed a machinery of facilitation, with Combs' inner circle acting as cogs in a well-oiled operation. The judge's ruling emphasized this multiplicity, that evidence consisted of testimony from Ventura and Jane, testimony from the escorts involved, and evidence from text messages and emails. The government proved its case many times over. It was a verdict not of doubt but of deluge, where the sheer volume of corroboration drowned out any whispers of reasonable uncertainty. Combs' trial, a 7-week marathon that gripped courtrooms and living rooms alike, had already carved a fault line through his legacy. Acquitted of the graver indictments, sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, charges that could have meant life behind bars, he nonetheless emerged with convictions on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. Each carries a statutory ceiling of 10 years, a sentence that, while finite, looms as a potential double-digit cage for a man whose life has been defined by unbound horizons. The prosecution, undeterred by the acquittals, advocated for an aggregate of 11 years, arguing that the context of conviction demands a reckoning with the broader pattern of predation. The defendant will not be punished for any crimes of which he was acquitted, of course, their September 30 filing asserted, but punishment for his crimes of conviction must take into account the manner in which he committed them. This manner, they contended, involved violence as a specter and fear as a tool, hallmarks that have elevated sentences beyond the minimum in analogous cases. The freak-offs, as detailed in court, were no mere dalliances but engineered extravaganzas, spanning days and demanding a phalanx of support, from procurement of pharmaceuticals to procurement of partners. Combs' prosecution framed this as an extension of his business acumen turned malevolent. The same network that amplified hits like "I'll Be Missing You" now allegedly funneled resources into these clandestine symposia. Witnesses described a conveyor belt of coercion, where participants were flown in, plied with incentives or intimidations, and ensconced in suites far from prying eyes. Jane's testimony mirrored Ventura's in its intimacy and indictment, recounting a parallel saga of relational entanglement laced with these rituals. The overlap in their stories, the isolation, the recordings, the repercussions, wove a tapestry of systemic abuse, challenging the narrative of Combs as a self-made savant and recasting him as an architect of anguish. Combs, 55, entered the fray pleading not guilty to all counts, his defense a bulwark of consent and context. Lawyers argued that these encounters were consensual explorations within the bounds of adult autonomy, that the Mann Act's application stretched its historical intent into irrelevance. They assailed Ventura's credibility,